So, I was actually thinking about cloud storage this morning.
Cloud storage.
Yeah, we have this modern anxiety that everything we do online is being tracked.
Oh, right. Logged and stored in some server farm out in the desert somewhere. Yeah.
Exactly. But what if I told you that concept isn't actually modern at all? What if the universe itself has a literal save feature?
And not just for your emails or your search history. We are talking about a system where every thought, every whispered secret, and every physical action since the Big Bang is preserved.
In high definition, three-dimensional reality.
It is the ultimate backup.
Right. Imagine if you could log into this system. You wouldn't just read about history. You could stand on the Senate floor and literally watch the assassination of Julius Caesar.
Or see the stones being dragged to Stonehenge.
Yeah. Today, we are doing a deep dive into a text that claims this isn't just some sci-fi fantasy, but a mechanical reality of our cosmos.
We are looking at C.W. Leadbeater's 1897 treatise called the Akashic Records.
Which originally ran in Lucifer magazine, right?
Yes, founded by Madame Blavatsky. Leadbeater was a highly controversial but incredibly influential figure in the early Theosophical society.
And his goal with this piece was surprisingly scientific.
Very much so. He wasn't interested in just telling ghost stories. He wanted to build a systematic framework for how cosmic memory actually functions.
And I should say right up front to anyone listening, we are not endorsing these occult viewpoints as literal facts. Our mission today is just to impartially unpack Leadbeater's highly detailed system and convey the ideas he laid out.
Right, we are looking at the mechanics he proposed.
Because it really feels less like a spell book and more like a physics textbook from a slightly different dimension.
That is a great way to put it.
So we are going to look at the memory of God, the geometry of the fourth dimension, and why you almost certainly were not Cleopatra in a past life.
He does have quite a bit of snark regarding the Cleopatra syndrome.
He really does. But before we get to the past lives, we have to start with the title itself. I was reading the first page, ready to learn about the Akashic Records, and Leadbeater essentially starts by saying, by the way, this title is entirely wrong.
It is a bit of a bait and switch, isn't it?
Totally.
But it shows you how precise these early Theosophists tried to be with their terminology. Leadbeater argues the term Akashic Records is actually a misnomer.
Because Akasha refers to something specific.
Exactly. In Theosophy, Akasha refers specifically to the matter of the mental plane. And while the records are read through that medium, he insists they don't really belong there.
He seems even more annoyed by people who call them records of the astral light.
Oh, he treats that like a massive rookie mistake.
Like you shouldn't even be in the room if you call it that.
That distinction is the linchpin of his whole argument, really. To Leadbeater, the astral plane is the realm of emotion and desire and illusion. So if you are trying to read the objective history of the universe from the astral plane, you are looking in the wrong place. You aren't seeing the source code. You are seeing a reflection of a reflection.
Which is where the trouble begins for most psychics.
Precisely.
So if it's not in the astral light, and it's not really Akashic in origin, where is this data actually stored? This brings us to what he calls the nebular hypothesis.
Which sounds like a Star Trek episode.
It really does.
Yeah.
But it's actually how he explains the creation of the solar system.
Right. He basically accepts the standard science of his day, that the solar system condensed from a giant nebula, but then he layers this massive occult concept on top of it called the Logos.
The Logos. This is the solar deity, right?
Yes. Leadbeater posits that before the physical sun or the planets even existed, this exalted being, the Logos, conceived the entire system in his mind.
Every stage of evolution.
Every event that would ever happen was held in his thought before it even became physical matter.
This is the part that finally made the mechanics click for me. It is the concept of the aura. Leadbeater compares the solar system to a human being.
He says that as we evolve, our consciousness expands and our aura, our energy field gets bigger.
He uses the example of the Buddha here.
You guys, he cites ancient scriptures claiming the Buddha's aura extended for 3 miles. The idea being that spiritual power physically expand your field of influence.
So if a human master has a 3-mile aura, then a being powerful enough to create an entire sun.
His aura would encompass the entire solar system. And this is the real aha moment of the text. We are physically living inside the aura of the Logos.
The planets, the asteroids, you and me, the empty space between us.
It is all within his consciousness.
Which means the Akashic Records aren't some cosmic library building you have to travel to.
No, they are a memory, literally the memory of God. Because we exist inside, His consciousness, everything that happens to us, is inherently happening to him.
It is an internal mental record that just never
Yeah.
fades. That reframes the whole thing from being magic to what you might call divine psychology. But here's the problem Leadbeater identifies.
How do we actually access it?
Right. If this is the private, perfect memory of a solar deity, how does a regular, flawed human tap into it? It seems like trying to hack into a supercomputer with a pocket calculator.
It is incredibly difficult. And Leadbeater uses a brilliant analogy to explain why we usually get it so wrong. He talks about the difference between looking at an actual object and looking at its reflection in water.
I love this visual.
It is very helpful.
So imagine you're standing at the edge of a still lake. If the water's perfectly calm, you can see the trees and the sky reflected on the surface.
Right. The image is clear, but it's inverted. Top is bottom, and it is two-dimensional. You can't reach out and feel the bark of the reflected tree.
Now add the element of the astral plane to this. Leadbeater describes the astral plane as being in constant furious motion because it is the plane of passion and human feeling.
So imagine a high wind suddenly hitting that calm lake.
The reflection completely shatters. You don't see a tree anymore. You just see broken fragments of color and light dancing around on the waves.
And that is exactly what the untrained clairvoyant sees when they look for the records in the astral plane. They see a chaotic, broken reflection.
They might catch a glimpse of a single leaf, which is technically a true fact, but it is completely disconnected from its context.
And then human nature being what it is, the psychic tries to fill in the gaps with their own imagination just to make a coherent story out of it.
Which inevitably leads to massive errors.
Leadbeater is adamant about this. To see the truth, you have to get out of the water. You have to rise above the astral plane to the mental or devacanic plane.
You have to go where the memory actually resides,
Yeah.
not where it's bouncing around in reflection.
Exactly. But even if you manage to get there, even if you are a high-level trained adept, you run into the bandwidth problem.
Or the translation issue.
How do you bring that pure, multidimensional information back down into a physical human brain? Leadbeater uses the landscape painter analogy here.
He asks us to imagine an artist trying to paint a dynamic, living landscape on a canvas.
No matter how talented the painter is, they're forcing a three-dimensional reality onto a flat, two-dimensional surface.
The painting can't convey the roar of the ocean, or the smell of the pine trees, or the cold temperature of the air.
It is just a flat representation of a living, breathing thing.
And Leadbeater argues that reading the records involves dimensions we don't even have language for, right?
Yes, on the devacanic plane, time and space behave like a fourth dimension. And if you go even higher, there's a fifth dimension.
So when a seer comes back to their body and tries to tell you what they saw, they are inevitably failing.
It is like trying to describe a 3D cube to a stick figure living on a flat sheet of paper. You just can't explain up and down to them.
And that is assuming the seer is completely unbiased, which they aren't.
Right. Leadbeater talks about the personal equation. Even if the vision is perfect, the person describing it is human.
If you and I both witnessed a car accident, we're going to give two slightly different accounts based on what caught our attention.
Leadbeater says clairvoyants are exactly the same. They naturally zoom in on what interests them and filter out the rest.
Which is why he insists on rigorous peer review. He essentially says, do not believe a single thing in a Theosophical book unless it has been cross-checked by multiple seers independently.
A standard that I imagine would clear out quite a few modern occult sections in bookstores today.
Oh, absolutely. Now I want to move to the section of the text that felt the most like a sci-fi movie. This is where Leadbeater stops sounding like a mystic and really starts sounding like an astrophysicist.
He uses the physics of light to explain how the past can still be present.
He references a fascinating book called The Stars and the Earth to make this point. It is all about the speed of light. Let's walk through the logic, because it is just a great piece of dinner party trivia.
He starts with our sun. We know light takes roughly 8 minutes to get from the sun to Earth.
So when you look up at the sun, you aren't seeing it as it is right now. You are seeing a ghost.
You are seeing the sun of 8 minutes ago. If the sun simply vanished this exact second, we wouldn't know for 8 whole minutes. We would still be basking in the light of a star that no longer exists.
Then he scales that concept way up. He talks about the pole star Polaris.
The light from Polaris takes roughly 50 years to reach Earth. So when we look up at the North Star at night, we are looking deep into the past. We are seeing the star as it was 50 years ago.
The present moment of that star is totally inaccessible to us.
Right.
And here is where the thought experiment just blew my mind. Leadbeater says, imagine an observer, let's call him a cosmic watcher, who has a super telescope and can instantly teleport anywhere in the universe.
If this observer teleports to the pole star right now and points his telescope back at Earth, what does he see?
The light arriving there right now left Earth 50 years ago.
Exactly. So he doesn't see us having this conversation today. He sees people from 50 years ago.
And if he teleports further back, say to a star 2,000 light years away,
he sees the Roman Empire. He sees the building of ancient monuments. The light from those physical events hasn't faded. It has just traveled further out into the depths of space.
So the implication is that the past isn't actually gone at all. It is just radiating outward forever.
Leadbeater ties this directly to omnipresence. If the Logos God is omnipresent, meaning he is at every single point in the universe simultaneously, then he doesn't have to chase the light.
The light from every event that has ever happened is physically present to his observation right now at some point in space.
So for the Logos history is not a timeline. It is a panorama. Everything is happening all at once.
That is the eternal now concept.
Exactly.
That handles the past perfectly. But then Leadbeater goes into the really tricky territory, the future.
The big question.
Right, because if the past is recorded light, what on earth is the future? Is it already written? Because if the Logos sees everything at once, that implies I don't really have a choice in what I'm about to say next.
This is where he has to thread the needle very carefully between fate and free will. And he uses one of the best analogies in the entire text, the train driver.
I found this really helpful. So imagine a train chugging along a track. That track represents your karma, right?
Yes, your destiny or the momentum of all your past choices.
You can't just turn the steering wheel and drive the train into the forest. You are literally on rails.
But there are junctions along the track.
Exactly.
And the junctions represent moments of genuine free will, a crisis point, or a major life decision. As the driver approaches the switch, he has a real choice. He can go left or right.
That is his free will.
But, and here's the constraint, once he pulls that lever and passes the junction, he is locked onto that new track until the very next junction.
So how does predicting the future work in this model?
Imagine someone floating in a balloon high above the landscape. They can see the tracks for miles ahead. They can see that 10 miles down the left track, the bridge is entirely washed out.
The driver down below can't see that.
But the observer can predict the crash with total certainty.
But can the observer in the balloon predict which switch the driver will pull at the junction?
Leadbeater says not with 100% certainty. The soul always has the inherent power to choose. However, he throws a bit of shade at humanity here. He says for the average person, prediction is mathematically simple.
Why are we really that boring?
We are creatures of habit. Leadbeater argues that most people are driven entirely by their environment, their past traumas, and their daily routines.
They don't actually exercise their active will, they just react.
Right. So a clairvoyant can look at their momentum and say there is a 99% chance they're going to make the exact same mistake they made last time.
That is a very humbling thought. It suggests that being unpredictable is actually a sign of higher spiritual evolution. If you are predictable, you are just a train mindlessly following a track.
Conscious action breaks the prediction. Now, he does mention that if you go even higher to the Buddhic plane, the whole concept of time collapses entirely. Past, present, and future are one organic whole.
But he admits our physical brains essentially short-circuit trying to understand that.
So he wisely leaves it as a mystery.
Let's ground this again. We have got the theory, the cloud storage, the physics of light, the train tracks. But how does someone actually Google search this system? Leadbeater talks about a technique called psychometry.
Psychometry is the idea that physical objects retain a magnetic link to their history. Think of it like a hyperlink or a QR code.
You need a specific link to find the specific file in this infinite database.
He gives a very concrete example involving Stonehenge.
Yes. He physically brought a tiny chunk of stone from Stonehenge back home with him, just a fragment no bigger than a pinhead.
And he put it in an envelope and handed it to a trained psychometer without telling her what it was at all.
A total blind test.
A completely blind test. And despite not knowing what was in the envelope, she immediately started describing the ruined landscape and the ancient history of the area.
The stone acted as a conductor.
It put her en rapport in direct connection with that specific stream of cosmic memory.
And when you are in the record, what is the user interface actually like? Is it like watching a movie on a screen?
It is immersive virtual reality, but much better. If you tune in to Julius Caesar's Landing, You aren't just watching from a distant camera angle. You feel like you are standing right there.
You hear the splash of the oars and the shout of the soldiers.
And he mentions you understand them right, even if you don't speak a word of Latin.
That is a fascinating detail, because you are accessing the mental record. You are connecting with the intent behind the words. You don't just hear the syllables. You know exactly what the person meant by them. You feel their underlying motives.
But you are still a ghost. You can't tap Caesar on the shoulder.
Strictly a spectator. You absolutely cannot change the past. Leadbeater compares it to being an invisible observer.
You can control the speed, though. You can fast forward and watch a year of history in an hour, or you can freeze frame a split second to study the tiny embroidery on a Roman cloak.
But no interacting. Which brings us to the topic everyone inevitably asks about when it comes to the record's reincarnation. Leadbeater says you can use these records to watch your own past lives.
He does, but he issues a massive warning here. He distinguishes between two ways of viewing a past life.
Yeah.
You can watch it like a movie, totally dissociated, observing your past self as just a character on a stage. Or you can actively unite your present consciousness with your past ego.
Meaning you feel what they felt.
Everything. The pleasures, the hates, the sheer physical pain of death. It is incredibly intense.
He warns that if you don't have a strong grip on your current identity, you can literally get lost in the echo of who you used to be. It can be deeply traumatic.
And speaking of getting lost in identity, we have to talk about the Mary Queen of Scots problem. This was the part of the text where Leadbeater let his British sarcasm really shine through.
Oh, it is his snarkiest moment by far. He points out a statistical anomaly among untrained people who claim to remember their past lives.
They are always royalty.
Nobody ever remembers being the peasant shoveling manure in the background. It is always a king or a queen.
Never the peasant. He notes that at the time he was writing this, he personally knew of 4 Mary Queen of Scots, 2 Cleopatras, and several Julius Caesars running around the Theosophical circles.
It is the I want to be special syndrome.
Leadbeater calls it out as pure ego. He says that these people catch a fleeting glimpse of a vibration in the astral plane. Maybe they just see a generic picture of Cleopatra and their ego immediately constructs a grand story where they are the star.
It perfectly highlights his main point, that occultism requires serious discipline. He compares it to math, doesn't he?
He does. He says simply being a good person or having kind feelings doesn't make you a clairvoyant any more than it makes you a skilled mathematician.
Right. Reading the Akashic Records is a technical skill.
It requires rigid self-discipline and years of hard training to separate the objective truth from your own psychological projections.
He does share one personal win, though, right? The dream about the house with the portico.
That was a fascinating validation for him. He had a recurring dream of a specific house with a portico overlooking a beautiful bay.
He knew the layout by heart. He knew exactly where the rooms were.
And later, when he was finally trained to access the records properly, he actively searched for that house in history.
And it wasn't just a fantasy.
No, it was exactly where he was born over 2,000 years ago. It was a legitimate memory leaking through into his modern brain.
But he frames that as the rare exception, not the rule. Usually dreams are just random brain noise.
Mostly just noise, yes.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what is the ultimate takeaway here? We have this massive complex system of planes and dimensions and divine memory. It is so grand and cosmic.
But Leadbeater ends the text on a surprisingly grounded, practical note.
Common sense. That is his banner. He literally writes that true occultism is the apotheosis of common sense.
Which means what, practically speaking, for you and me?
Don't be weird about it. Don't look for a mystical explanation if a simple physical one works perfectly well.
Right. If you lose your keys, it is probably because you dropped them, not because a mischievous nature spirit stole them.
He wants people to be rational. The universe is incredibly magical.
Yes.
And it is recorded in infinite detail, but we still have to live our lives in this physical world.
I think the image that is going to stick with me tonight is the concept of the living photograph.
It is a really powerful concept to leave on.
The idea that nothing is truly lost. Every small kindness, every hidden mistake, every secret, it is all there permanently encoded in the light stored in the vast memory of the universe.
It makes you realize that your life isn't just a series of fleeting, meaningless moments. It is a permanent cosmic record.
And it is accessible if someone has the sheer will and the intense training to find it.
It brings me right back to that train analogy. If your life is a track, and you are coming up on a junction right now, who is watching your train? And more importantly, which switch are you going to pull?
That is the big question, isn't it?
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure.
We will see you next time.